The arch could be parabolic arch, pointed arch, semicircular arch.
Okay.
The basic ideas here that you'll see as one is to understand the balance of an arch with nature. How does it balance? Is it really all the concrete and cement that we stick it together? Or is it by itself can stand up? And we're saying that if you understand friction, because when you put these two bricks together, there are frictions against each other, the edges. And then the wedging, and each one of these will be perpendicular, as she said, to the arch itself. You will end up like a Gothic arch, or a Roman arch, or it's called Persian arch, goat horn arch. Those are the names. This one is hemispherical, semicircular. Now, building this thing, I'm working here for the next couple of days, 2 3 days. Remember, the speed is absolutely nothing here to us. It's the careful laying, making of all these bricks that are important. Or the bags that you work with, super adobe, all of these. You want to make sure that you really learn it, and it doesn't matter who does in what speed. Because this is by itself is a meditative process. So as you can see, each brick touches the other brick at the base, inside. Okay, so that's the friction. And then second, it does 1 and 2 wedges, means it keeps it in that form. It's dry packed, means it's packed dry with, you could later fill it up with the mud or cement. But first you set it up in this formation. Now at all this time, we're trying to do without the cement, without anything, to make this arch stand up. That means if we have enough buttressing to hold this force to open it up, because when we are building arches anywhere, you can see, in missions, for example, or any building, you see always there is one arch and then there is next arch. Because the arch, the only thing is it tries to separate, depending how shallow it is. So all along you're going to need buttressing behind these things, and it should come up from both sides at the same time so that it's balanced. You'll hold the triangle together and slowly pull it out. You see, more or less unity of the forces in nature. So today we'll be talking about design. Design of, that's the element of design, means now you looked at these little domes, you looked at the vaults, you walked here, you worked on some of the materials, so you're getting familiar with it. So you want to start doing your house, or your school, or your healing center, or your eco-village. How do you go about designing these things? For those who are not architects or planners or designers, how would you approach this? To approach that, I will continue getting a little more in depth in what I showed you passing in the last session about the alpha principles of earth architecture that we carry on is arches, vaults, domes, earth, water, air and fire. I believe with these 7 notes you can really create almost anything that you want to do. And just like music, it's unlimited possibilities. If you go, for example, right now to city of Isfahan in Iran, you'll see 40 acres of downtown covered under one roof. But that roof is thousands of little domes and vaults and courtyard, domes and vaults and courtyards, and they all are connected underneath with these long bazaars, and the bazaars connect to the warehouses go to the housing. Just everything comes out of that spine, design of the spine, especially in a desert environment. It's good to have this bazaar-like spine that is your commercial center, and from there you go to all your function of residential, school, all of these areas. Okay, So it is not that we are asking everybody to start building walls and domes. This isn't about that at all. It is to show you the structures that could be reasonably built today, that could withstand hurricanes and flood and even earthquakes and all of these. What are those structures? Why are we looking back into history and to see what is the real medicine that we need, our body needs? Is it all this chemical we are putting together and selling for every little pain that you have, just like credit cards, you get, at the end you get the new credit cards to cover all the other credit cards if they get lost. The medicines are the same thing, and food is the same, because we already know today it is the food that, plus other elements in life, that gets us into health or not health. And quite a few people are, of course, changing. If 30 years ago, if maybe everybody would smoke cigarette, because it was just the way that we all grew up with it. I was also one of the smokers myself. And then slowly things changed and turned around. And a new way of thinking has come for food, for smoking, for seat belts. That was, I remember some 25 years ago, anybody who were vegetarian, they said, well, it's for sissies that you have vegetables or gross. Otherwise, everybody will stick to steaks. It is not that the steaks are gone, but it is also the new additions that have come in. So we're saying in design is really the same things. We are not abandoning everything in all this work. We are taking the best of the past and moving it into the future. That's what really our work is. I mentioned to you the same design as it's used for the chassis and wheels of a Rolls Royce is the same thing that Socrates was riding on it, and pharaohs were riding on these things called carriages. Therefore, we kept those essence, the timeless materials in these, and then we just added now the new technology of engine, safety, even to seat belt. These are the same thing. Earth architecture, we keep what is the best from the past, which is those 7 elements I talked to you: arches, walls, domes, and then earth, water, air, and fire. Those are almost unchanged anywhere you go in the universe. And we come up now with all these new design parameters that are based on those elements, and then go into organic forms and whatever form you like, as long as you understand how they are holding together. Instead of just coming in with a big wild design, say I want to build this with earth architecture. It is not. Definitely it's like a martial art that you need to know the movement, the meaning of them, and then you can be anybody from movie actors to Bruce Lee to whoever it was, after learning those principles. This is what we are going to talk a little bit today about it. What are the principles of design of this earth architecture? Because in different parts of the world it's also different. Like where I come from, Iran or Persia, same place, there is something that walls have always been the greatest thing to have. To build a wall has been the pride of neighbors, the cities, the town, just what type of wall you build. As a matter of fact, the word hamsaye means the people who share the shade of the same wall, means a neighbor. So you build a wall with your neighbor. First you build a wall. They get the shade in the morning and you get the shade in the afternoon. So the word neighbor is hamsaye, means the people who share the shade of that same wall. So you begin a neighborhood, you begin a community by building walls, because they have very important functions. They have affected the designs and the way of life, and all the way to songs that are called like Kuchabagi songs, means the people who walk by these walls and sing traditional songs. Even going to the bath or going to a wedding, you have different songs developed for it. Okay? But you come to this part of the world, walls are something is not wanted. Good fences make good neighbors. Don't fence me in. And just trying to tear down the walls of east and west in Berlin, although now we're beginning to build walls by Mexico, and we're building walls between Palestine and Israel, we're building walls. Still, some of it, they have no other solutions for it. But the concept is changed really when you come from one culture to the others. Here are some of the most beautiful poetry written by Robert Frost, that there is something that doesn't love a wall and wants it down. And then you go over there, they say, oh, the word hamsaye, neighbor, is same as hamdel, means two people who have the same heart, they love each other. Or hamsar means husband and wife, they put their head next to each other. Everything is made from that word. Ham means togetherness, unity. So you built a wall there to begin at freedom and privacy. You tear down a wall here to have total openness, you see? In both cultures, in recent world, of course, last few thousand years, there are many things that you can see that are common, but it doesn't mean that by importing this whole idea of modernity, in most of the third world, they tore down whatever they have, the architecture. They're tearing down very quickly because they want American type of housing. They want concrete block, or they want wooden structures. And yet there is no such thing. There is no wood, there is no concrete block. And they tear down what they have in the hope that you get Western, aids and financing, and then you build on what is copied from this rest of the world. But if we recognize what is the good thing to keep and what are the things to abandon, then like many cultures of the world. So the wall therefore has find totally two different meanings. Here in this part of the world, you make good neighbors by tearing down the wall. Over there, you could make good neighbors by building a wall. Earth architecture is the only one that really has traveled around the world. From Navajo reservation, you can see they're building hogans for the last several thousand years here. The hogans are made into male hogans and female hogans. That means a smaller, two different domes. They're all like this looking into the east. And then you go to South America, you go to Mexico, you go to China. Egypt, you'll see these things have developed in their own way, sometimes very similar. As I have that in ceramic houses. Do you have ceramic houses? You could do that. Comparing the two areas in the world, the one in Iran, the one in America, pueblos, you will see there's so much similarity because they both took the material from earth, they built. That over there was the philosophy of dust to dust. That means, you build something and it goes back, fall to death. Here is the philosophy of everything is growing out of the ground, in the Native Americans here. But it's a similar thing. They built with earth. It's for the shade. It's for protection, security, everything. So we keep all of that in mind, and you will have no fear to design something in New York City if it's necessary to build with earth buildings. Of course, immediately you jump in, you say, but doesn't make sense. The land over there is so expensive that you can't build like that. Of course, now you can even build it maybe on top of your buildings. Who knows, for non-toxic maybe space sometime in the future will be built. But it doesn't mean that you will carry this architecture everywhere. Many people come and tell us, why don't you build one of these in Los Angeles? When the time comes for it, we will building it in Los Angeles. But why right now add to all of that hustle and bustle and problem that exists in Los Angeles? What are we proving by there? As a matter of fact, Los Angeles and New York, a lot of it are moving out of the cities. I mean, I used to teach skyscrapers and in what condition you built them and why you will build them. And skyscrapers right there. It was all started in Chicago, where banks and insurance companies wanted to bring all their employees together in one place, so that they don't have to travel from this street to that street. So the skyscraper began actually in Chicago, and there are still some of those buildings are there, monotonic buildings and so on. But today, the amount of crimes and problems that exist in the cities, in what started to make these big high-rises and very clustered place around the Wall Street, which was the stock market, today many of these companies are moving away from stock company, from Wall Street, because imagine, why would you need to be together there anymore? Because right now fax, telephone, internet, and those were the reason that people were crammed together. Now it's giving us technology to stay at home and then do all of those works, and then maybe you get together for the communities and other reasons. As a matter of fact, some of the big companies like I think Northrop and big corporations are now encouraging some of their employees to stay at home. Very wise company would recognize that by the time the people come there together, they go back again, they come back again, it's very inefficient. So you see all those reasons that people used to get and cram and crowd the city is losing its values, how it started it. So all of that is now, we will see that you can have your whole publishing world in your desk, right there in your desktop computer or your laptop. Same thing. That technology is perfect with Earth architecture. You don't need to start building high-rises. You don't need to build on that. You could have a choice now to move out somewhere that is pleasant to live, and then from there you will set up your own life and you have your communications. Okay? This Earth architecture is a similar thing. Once you know the principles of how to build, and our type specifically, that we focus on these curved areas like arches and vaults and domes and so on, is for several reasons. Why are we building things in arch forms? I showed it in last sessions about this being the principle of this whole design. Alphabet is an arch, and you built an arch yesterday. You saw by just the gravity and then angle of repose and friction, you can make sand and bricks stand up. Imagine if you built your arch, that same thing on the moon. Come back 1 billion years from now, it's still standing. Because there is no earthquake, there is no moonquakes, there is not something that is, as we experience here, in that intensity, it doesn't exist there. Yes, on Mars there's up to 200 miles an hour windstorms. You still could use these structures, but not your arches, wouldn't last probably there after a big windstorm. So once therefore you learn to build this structure, which is a unity by itself, means it will stand by itself. The difference between the post and beam and this, we in the West, in this part of the world, in Western world, we inherited the post and beams from classical Greek architecture, then Romans and so on. Means you built your columns and then you have your beams straight on top of that. Now building that, to start with, you're working against gravity all the time, because anything you build, the gravity wants to pull it down. Okay? So that beam, straight beams, like in our back porch, take a look, they all have bowed down like this after a while. And no matter what you build, ultimately it will fall down because it's working against gravity until it gets wears out, and depending if it's wood or concrete. But when you build an arch, you're just moving totally a different directions. That means you're building something that works with nature, with harmony or with the gravity. That means every molecule of this arch, the more it's pressed, the more tighter it gets in a very simple form, discussing it, and the stronger it becomes because the gravity is helping it. As if the gravity pulls, this molecule gets tighter and tighter. See? So you can see even the structures that a long time ago we built, and I was part of it and I was managing it, and some of the design in LAX parking structures. We did a lot of those things, prefabricated parking structures. Within 2 months put it up, and then we had posts and beams. It was long tables with 4 legs that was 64 foot long, so that you could park 2 cars and then drive in between. And then we put those tables right next to each other and then on top of each other, and put cables through them both ways like spine, and then pull those cables tight so everything stands together, which is called post-tension or pre-stress system. So this unit then will stand by itself. It doesn't need a column, it doesn't need a beam, you don't need to cut trees or bring steel or bring concrete. If you build this from earth, stone, concrete block, concrete, whatever, it stands by itself. If you just give it enough strength in 2 sides so it doesn't collapse, then it's a unit that works itself and continues. Now the same principle then applies when you turn this around, it becomes the stone you're sitting in. See? Then you're creating what we call shell structures. I think I talked about the egg. We get the students are coming next week, 70 of them or so from Orange County in different places, and kids, maybe around 10, 12 years old. We told them each one of them should bring a boiled egg. And they all come and sit here, climb here, sit on the floor here. And along the way, we are asking them, how many bricks are there in this building? And we give them one little formula of math, and then we tell the rest of them, you start counting. This one person get the whole answer in 1 minute, the other ones still are counting. So we said that's the importance of math, that you know one little formula will tell you how many bricks there are here, because you multiply, you find the square foot of this floor, which is a circle. What is the square foot? You double that, it becomes for half a sphere, so pi r square. If it's pi r to the 4th, that would be a sphere, pi r square is half of that. So that will give you how many square foot are the walls. And we know on each square foot there are like 7 bricks. So you multiply by that, you already get the number of the bricks here. But for those who don't know, they have to go through this whole counting period. So that's the importance of math they recognize. And we tell them, take that egg in a long way and put it in the palm of your hand and try to break it. Whoever breaks that egg, we give them $100. We're still waiting for an egg to be broken. And of course, the kids, they say, oh, it's nothing. And they go, whoa, and then 2 people press, 3 people press, it doesn't work. That egg is a shell structure. Even though it's very thin, you can't break it. In this part of the world, we haven't really learned how to do the shell structure because there were plenty of forests around here. Whenever when the pioneers came, they brought in saw, hammer, and some nails, and it was okay. There were plenty of trees for not too many houses. But now the trend is reversing. There are millions of houses are being built, and these trees are cut into 2x4, and hidden behind a stucco wall for the rest of their lives. I mean, we are not against using wood. We say, if you use wood, let's see the wood. Let's see in your flooring, let's see your furniture. Wood has also a very important characteristic in life, and we need to see it. If you don't see it, use something else. Why are you using wood? Until there is fire in these buildings, and then the wood just evaporates and goes, doesn't matter. I was invited to Santa Barbara after that big fire a few years ago. You could see everything was gone except a couple of plaster in two sides of those walls, or the chimneys and fireplace. Because they said, well, if we would have had this sort of roofing, the fire wouldn't affect this. And I mentioned, I said, look at this thing. It has totally evaporated the wood. Because when the temperature gets to 1,000 to 1,500 degrees, it doesn't matter what cover you have over it. And I remember that that was the time that they asked me, so what's your solution? I said, my solution starts from elementary school. Don't teach children that's the only way to build a house. Because that needs wood, that needs trees. If you change that image, which we carry for the rest of our lives, and if instead of that we have an arch, then you can create anything. Even with pieces of branches, you can create these structures very simply. I mean, like you're building a vault with pieces of wood. And then we had one in the forest that they invited me, and I went there to show how these buildings could be built with cut off small branches, not even the whole tree. They said, well, how are you going to bend these things all of like that, you see? I said, you give us the leftover of these 2x4, we built them. The way you build these, you just built them this way. Lines going the other way. You don't need to bend anything. And that's what this Super Adobe is giving you. You know, you're giving you line generators. These are structures you're learning. You generate spaces with lines. Just like what you saw yesterday as you're doing, you're generating a structure with just lines alone. You could do that. And you don't cut the trees, cut the branches off maybe, and then build it this way. And of course, we said, whatever you have left over, give it to us, we'll build you a house here. And in the forest, it was Michigan Cal forest, he said, well, no, I think we'll give you the wood, you take it somewhere else. I said, no, we want to build it here. Just so people see there is other ways of building. You don't build that way. So I'm back to that same idea of pitched roof against an arch. And that arch is self-sufficient structures. And as I talked in the last session, arches back to back, and you have this rectangular room. As you saw, you're building here, we saw the big house. It's nothing but a bunch of arches put back to back. As a matter of fact, that's how the great tunnels are created by volcanic, by magma. As they flow in, they create tunnels. It's based on these same principles because the forces are on this side and arches are created. Arches National Park in this country, huge arch because of erosion by sea or water. Those are the only structure that stands up. Okay, I remember with my daughter and son one time when they were very little, we got one of these hats. It's just a regular soft hat you put on your head with woolen. We wet it and put it in the freezer. And then we took it off and they were jumping on top of it. Just a frozen hat became now all of a sudden a structure because it became a shell. So that's the shell structure that we are talking about. This structure that you're seeing, probably it's the thinnest structure you can get in California. It's thin shell. It's a very thin shell, doesn't even have reinforcing. It's gone through earthquakes and he's tested and everything for it. Okay? So those are the difference of way of looking at these things, of by learning it from nature. The way a spider web is, you've seen that. You know, a spider sits on top of this tree until the wind blows, it hangs itself, and until the wind blows it to the other trees, That first line is connected. And then it starts weaving. It creates for you the Golden Gate Bridge. Verrazano Narrows in New York, huge span. That's really our structures, see? There makes no difference what you have there. The structures are created based on that same principle. A cable will make your structures. That cable is the same as a spider web. These are same as an eggshell or as a seashells. I mean, imagine the most beautiful structures, some of the most beautiful structures in nature are seashells. You've seen the best color, best texture, strongest structures, and it's waterproof. And it's made from water. Now that is the intelligence of an architect or engineer who is building that from the water, the shell that will protect it, and it's also waterproof. And that little creature that goes inside those shells, they don't call themselves, we are in the image of God, as we do. And yet, for us to build a small house, we have to go and cut the forest, create all these factories, bring cement, bring steel, bring plastic, all of that, just to build ourselves a small house. So we are not really that advanced. We're constantly trying to help that, see? It is possible then, we say, if you build with earth, just the earth alone can help you build structures that are good and just like that seashell and better. I mean, the only thing now we are using extra in this earth, as I said, we are using those bags and barbed wires. I mean, you can eliminate the